November 10th, 2024. 25-year-old Alex Chen was clearing out his desk at Sterling and Associates Marketing while his colleagues watched in uncomfortable silence. His boss, Richard Sterling, had just fired him the most humiliating way possible, calling him into a meeting room in front of the entire office and announcing that Alex was being terminated for consistently poor performance and lack of potential for advancement. "Pack your things and security will escort you out," Richard had said with obvious satisfaction. "Frankly, Alex, I'm doing you a favor. You're clearly not cut out for the business world, and it's better that you learn that now before you waste more of everyone's time." Alex had worked at Sterling and Associates for 2 years, consistently exceeding his performance targets and bringing in new clients that generated millions in revenue for the company. But Richard had made Alex's life miserable from his first day, undermining his projects, stealing credit for his ideas, and blocking every promotion opportunity that became available. The other employees knew that Alex was being treated unfairly, but Richard Sterling was a powerful executive with connections throughout the industry, and no one was willing to challenge his decisions about personnel matters. Alex had no choice but to accept the humiliation and leave the job he had worked so hard to excel at. But as Alex walked toward the exit with security guard beside him, carrying a box of his personal belongings and trying to maintain his dignity, he had no idea that Richard Sterling had just made the biggest mistake of his professional life. What Richard didn't know was that Alex Chen was not just another entry-level marketing associate whose career he could destroy on a whim. Alex was the son of David Chen, the billionaire CEO of Chen Global Industries, the parent company that owns Sterling and Associates and dozens of other subsidiaries around the world. And when David Chen learned that his son had been fired and humiliated by an employee of his own company, Richard Sterling's career would end in a way that would become legendary in the business world as the ultimate example of what happens when you fire the wrong person's son. If this story truly touches your heart, let it speak for you. Like this video, subscribe to be part of our journey, and share your feelings in the comments. Alex Chen had deliberately chosen to work at Sterling and Associates under his mother's maiden name, using Alex Martinez on his resume and employment documents to avoid any suggestion that his career success was due to family connections rather than his own merit. His father, David Chen, was one of the most powerful businessmen in the world, but Alex was determined to build his own reputation without relying on nepotism or family influence. "I want to succeed because I'm good at what I do, not because of who my father is," Alex had explained to his parents when he decided to use his mother's name professionally. "If I can't make it on my own merit, then I don't deserve to make it at all." David and Maria Chen had been proud of their son's determination to forge his own path, but they had also worried about Alex taking on unnecessary challenges when family connections could have opened doors and provided protection from workplace politics and abuse. "You know you can call me if you ever need help or someone treats you unfairly," David had told Alex when he started his job at Sterling and Associates. "I didn't build this company so my son could be mistreated by people who work for me." But Alex had insisted on handling his own career challenges and had never mentioned to his parents the increasingly hostile treatment he was receiving from his direct supervisor, Richard Sterling. Richard Sterling had been threatened by Alex's competence and work ethic from the moment he joined the company. Alex was intelligent, creative, and had a natural talent for developing marketing strategies that delivered exceptional results for clients. His success made Richard look mediocre by comparison, and Richard had responded by systematically undermining Alex's work and limiting his opportunities for advancement. Alex has potential, but he lacks maturity and leadership qualities necessary for senior positions, Richard would tell other executives when Alex's name came up for promotions. He's better suited for supporting roles rather than client-facing responsibilities. But Alex's actual performance told a different story. He had brought in over $15 million in new business during his 2 years at the company, had received glowing reviews from every client he worked with, and had developed innovative campaign strategies that had been adopted company-wide. Alex's colleagues recognized his exceptional abilities and were confused by Richard's obvious hostility toward one of their most successful team members. But Richard Sterling had 20 years of experience in the company and strong relationships with senior management, making it difficult for anyone to challenge his assessment of Alex's performance. The breaking point had come when Alex developed a marketing campaign for a major client that generated unprecedented results and earned industry recognition. Instead of acknowledging Alex's achievement, Richard had taken full credit for the campaign and had used its success to secure a promotion for himself. "I want you to know that your supporting work on the Henderson campaign was adequate," Richard had told Alex after receiving recognition for the campaign that Alex had designed and executed. "You're learning how real marketing professionals operate, and that experience will be valuable for your future career." Alex had finally reached his limit with Richard's abuse and had requested a meeting with Human Resources to discuss his supervisor's behavior and his own career advancement opportunities. But Richard had learned about Alex's HR complaint and had decided to fire Alex before any investigation could reveal the extent of his misconduct and credit stealing. "Alex Martinez represents everything wrong with this generation of workers," Richard had told the HR director when justifying his decision to terminate Alex. "He's entitled, he doesn't respect authority, and he thinks he deserves recognition and advancement without putting in the years of hard work that real success requires." The HR director had been uncomfortable with Richard's characterization of Alex, whose performance reviews and client feedback contradicted Richard's assessment. But Richard's seniority and influence in the company had made it difficult to challenge his personnel decisions. Alex's humiliating termination would set in motion a chain of events that would expose Richard Sterling's pattern of abuse and credit stealing, but would also reveal family connections that would destroy Richard's career in the most spectacular way possible. Alex Chen spent his first weekend after being fired trying to decide whether to tell his parents about his termination or to continue handling his career challenges independently. He was embarrassed about being fired and didn't want to admit to his father that he had failed to succeed on his own merit. But Alex's mother Maria noticed his mood during their regular Sunday family dinner and eventually convinced him to explain why he seemed upset and distracted. "Richard Sterling has been making my life miserable since I started working there," Alex admitted to his parents. "He's been stealing credit for my work, blocking my promotions, and undermining my projects. I finally complained to HR, and he fired me before they could investigate." David Chen listened to his son's account of workplace abuse with growing anger. But what made him furious was learning that the abuse had been perpetrated by an employee of his own company against his own son. "Alex, you've been working for one of my subsidiaries this entire time, and you never told me that you were being mistreated?" David asked, his voice controlled but clearly angry. "I want to succeed on my own," Alex explained. "I didn't want anyone to think I got opportunities because of family connections." David Chen understood and respected his son's desire for independence, but he was not going to allow an employee of his company to abuse and humiliate his son without consequences. "I appreciate your determination to succeed on your own merit," David told Alex. "But Richard Sterling works for me, and he just made the biggest mistake of his career by treating my son this way." David began making phone calls that evening to learn more about Richard Sterling's management style, his treatment of other employees, and his overall performance as an executive. What he discovered would justify not just Richard's termination, but a complete investigation into his conduct throughout his career. The investigation David ordered revealed that Richard had a pattern of taking credit for subordinates' work, blocking talented employees' advancement opportunities, and creating hostile work environments for anyone who threatened his position or challenged his authority. Richard Sterling has been systematically undermining talented employees and stealing credit for their achievements for years, the investigative report concluded. His management style has cost the company significant talent and has created legal liability due to his discriminatory treatment of certain employees. But the most damaging finding was that Richard had been embezzling company funds through falsified expense reports and kickback arrangements with certain vendors, crimes that could result in criminal charges as well as termination. David Chen now had multiple justifications for destroying Richard Sterling's career, but the personal satisfaction would come from letting Richard know exactly why his life was being ruined and by whom. David Chen's investigation into Richard Sterling would reveal crimes and misconduct that went far beyond mistreating Alex, but the confrontation between father and son's abuser would become the stuff of corporate legend. David Chen scheduled a meeting with the senior management of Sterling and Associates for the following Thursday, ostensibly to discuss performance optimization and personnel management strategies. Richard Sterling was included in the meeting as one of the company's senior executives, unaware that he was about to face the consequences of firing his CEO's son. The meeting was held in the main conference room of Sterling and Associates, with Richard and 5 other executives presenting reports on their department's performance and management strategies. Richard was confident and relaxed, having recently fired Alex and secured recognition for the marketing campaign he had stolen credit for. "I've been focused on upgrading our talent pool by removing underperforming employees who lack the commitment and skills necessary for success in our competitive industry," Richard reported to David Chen, who was sitting at the head of the conference table listening with apparent interest. "Can you give me an example of this talent optimization process?" David asked, his tone neutral and professional. "Just last week, I terminated an employee named Alex Martinez who had been consistently underperforming and had become disruptive to team morale," Richard explained proudly. He was the type of entitled employee who expected recognition and advancement without putting in the hard work that real success requires. David Chen looked around the conference room at the other executives, all of whom were unaware of the relationship between their CEO and the employee Richard had just described firing. "Tell me more about this Alex Martinez," David requested. "What specific performance issues justified his termination?" Richard began describing Alex's supposed shortcomings, apparently unaware that he was digging his own professional grave with every word. "Alex Martinez was insubordinate, entitled, and frankly not very bright," Richard continued. "He complained to HR when I didn't give him credit for work that I had actually supervised and contributed to significantly. He seemed to think that just showing up and doing basic tasks entitled him to recognition and advancement." David Chen allowed Richard to continue disparaging Alex for several more minutes, giving him enough rope to hang himself with his lies and character assassination. "Richard, I'm curious about something," David finally said. "In your assessment, what kind of future do you think Alex Martinez will have in the business world after being fired for performance issues?" "Honestly, I think I did him a favor by firing him early in his career," Richard replied confidently. "He's better off learning now that he doesn't have what it takes to succeed in business, rather than failing repeatedly throughout his career." David Chen smiled for the first time during the meeting, but it was not a pleasant smile. "Richard, I appreciate your detailed assessment of Alex Martinez's character and potential," David said. "Now I'd like you to meet Alex Martinez's father." The confusion on Richard's face was immediate as he tried to process what David Chen had just said. "Richard, Alex Martinez is actually Alex Chen, my son, who has been working under his mother's maiden name because he wanted to succeed on his own merit rather than relying on family connections." Richard Sterling's realization that he had fired and humiliated the CEO's son would be just the beginning of the consequences he would face for years of workplace abuse and criminal misconduct. The silence in the conference room was deafening as Richard Sterling processed a reality that he had just spent 10 minutes describing the CEO's son as worthless and entitled to the CEO himself. Richard's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, horror, and finally panic as he realized the magnitude of his mistake and the career implications of having fired David Chen's son. "Mr. Chen, I had no idea that Alex was your son," Richard stammered. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. "If I had known about the family connection, I would have handled the situation differently." David Chen's response was swift and devastating. "Richard, the fact that you would have treated my son differently if you had known who his father was tells me everything I need to know about your character and your fitness to manage other people. But more importantly," David continued, "your description of my son's performance and character is completely contradicted by objective evidence. Alex brought in over $15 million in new business during his 2 years at this company, received outstanding client reviews, and developed innovative strategies that are still being used company-wide." David then presented the results of his investigation into Richard's management practices, which revealed years of credit stealing, employee abuse, and misconduct that had been carefully documented. "Richard, the investigation into your management style has revealed a pattern of taking credit for subordinates' work, blocking talented employees' career advancement, and creating hostile work environments for anyone who challenged your authority," David explained. "But we also discovered evidence of embezzlement, falsified expense reports, and kickback arrangements that constitute criminal fraud." Richard Sterling realized that he was not just facing termination for firing the CEO's son, but potential criminal charges for financial crimes that had been uncovered during the investigation. "Mr. Chen, I can explain those financial discrepancies," Richard began, but David cut him off. Richard, you're fired immediately for cause, which means you forfeit all severance pay, stock options, and retirement benefits. Security will escort you out of the building, and you should expect to be contacted by law enforcement regarding the criminal charges that will be filed against you. Additionally, I'm implementing a company-wide policy that any employee who experiences workplace abuse or credit stealing can report directly to my office, and we will investigate thoroughly and prosecute both civilly and criminally when appropriate. The other executives in the room watched in stunned silence as Richard Sterling was escorted out of the conference room by security, his 20-year career ending in disgrace and potential imprisonment. But David Chen wasn't finished with ensuring that Richard Sterling faced full consequences for his abuse of Alex and other employees. David Chen's revenge against Richard Sterling would extend beyond termination to ensure that Richard would never again be in a position to abuse employees or steal credit for their work. Within hours of Richard Sterling's termination, David Chen had contacted colleagues throughout the business community to ensure that Richard's misconduct became widely known and that he would be unable to find comparable employment elsewhere. Richard Sterling has been terminated from our company for cause, including embezzlement, credit stealing, and systematic abuse of talented employees. David explained to other CEOs and industry leaders, "I want to make sure that other companies are aware of his character and conduct before he attempts to find new employment." The business community's response was swift and comprehensive. Richard Sterling found himself blacklisted from executive positions throughout the industry, with his reputation for misconduct preceding any job applications he might submit. But David Chen also ensured that the employees Richard had abused and exploited received recognition and compensation for their contributions to the company's success. Alex Chen was offered his job back with a promotion to senior manager, a significant salary increase, and a formal apology from the company for the misconduct he had experienced. He was also given credit for all the work that Richard had stolen from him, and his innovative marketing strategies were recognized industry-wide. "I want you to come back to Sterling and Associates, but this time with the recognition and authority that your performance has earned," David told his son. "You've proven that you can succeed on your own merit, and now you can succeed with the support and respect you deserve." The other employees whom Richard had abused or exploited were also given promotions, raises, and recognition for their contributions that Richard had minimized or stolen credit for. The company implemented new policies to prevent credit stealing and workplace abuse, with direct reporting channels to senior management for anyone experiencing mistreatment. Richard Sterling's criminal charges resulted in a conviction for embezzlement and fraud, leading to 2 years in prison and restitution payments that eliminated his savings and forced him to sell his home and other assets. Richard Sterling went from being a powerful executive to being unemployable and in prison within 6 months of firing my son, David Chen reflected. But the real justice was that Alex proved he could succeed on his own merit, and Richard proved that his success had been built on stealing other people's work. The story of Richard Sterling's spectacular downfall became legendary in the business world as an example of what happens when workplace bullies target the wrong person, and as a reminder that treating employees fairly is both morally right and professionally essential. Alex Chen's return to Sterling and Associates would mark the beginning of a new chapter in his career, but also the start of a company-wide transformation that would prevent other employees from experiencing the abuse that Richard Sterling had inflicted. Alex Chen's decision to return to Sterling and Associates was motivated not just by the promotion and recognition he was offered, but by his desire to help create a workplace culture where talented employees would be supported rather than exploited. "I want to make sure that what happened to me never happens to another employee at this company," Alex explained during his first meeting as a senior manager. Richard Sterling was able to abuse his authority for years because there were no systems in place to protect employees from credit stealing and workplace bullying. Under Alex's leadership, Sterling and Associates implemented comprehensive policies for recognizing employee contributions, preventing credit stealing, and providing safe channels for reporting workplace abuse. The company also established mentorship programs to help talented employees advance their careers without facing the obstacles that Richard Sterling had created. "We want Sterling and Associates to be known as a company that develops talent rather than exploiting it," Alex said during a company-wide meeting to introduce the new policies. "Every employee deserves to be recognized for their contributions and supported in their career advancement." The transformation of Sterling and Associates' workplace culture had immediate positive results. Employee satisfaction increased dramatically, productivity improved, and the company began attracting top talent from competitors who had heard about the positive changes. Alex's own career flourished in an environment where his contributions were recognized, and his advancement was based on merit rather than politics. Within 2 years of returning to the company, he was promoted to vice president and was being recognized as one of the most innovative marketing executives in the industry. Alex proved that he could succeed on his own merit even when facing discrimination and abuse, David Chen said during a speech at an industry conference. But he also proved that talented employees can achieve even more when they're supported by fair and ethical management. The story of Alex Chen's firing and triumphant return became a case study taught in business schools as an example of how workplace cultures can be transformed and how family connections, when used ethically, can create positive change rather than unfair advantages. Richard Sterling's downfall, meanwhile, served as a cautionary tale about the long-term consequences of abusing authority and exploiting subordinates. His imprisonment and professional blacklisting became a reminder that workplace bullies eventually face consequences for their behavior. Richard Sterling's career ended because he forgot that every employee deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their family connections or background, Alex reflected. But more importantly, his downfall showed that abusive managers can't hide their misconduct forever, and that companies benefit when they protect and develop their talent rather than allowing it to be exploited. If you made it all the way here, it means this story truly held you. So don't leave without showing some love. Hit like, subscribe to stay with us, and drop a comment. I'll be here, reading every word you share. 3 years after Richard Sterling's firing and imprisonment, the transformation of Sterling and Associates had become a model for ethical workplace management throughout the industry. Alex Chen had risen to become the company's youngest senior vice president, leading not just through his innovative marketing strategies, but through his commitment to developing and protecting other employees. The policies Alex had implemented to prevent credit stealing and workplace abuse have been adopted by other companies throughout the Chen Global Industries network, creating a ripple effect that improved workplace cultures for thousands of employees. Alex's experience with workplace abuse became the catalyst for company-wide changes that have benefited everyone. David Chen explained during an interview about ethical business practices. Sometimes the worst experiences can lead to the most positive outcomes when people are committed to preventing others from suffering similar treatment. Alex had also become a sought-after speaker at business conferences and leadership seminars, sharing his story as an example of how talented employees can overcome workplace obstacles and how companies can create cultures that support rather than exploit their talent. I learned that success isn't just about individual achievement, Alex said during a keynote speech at a major business conference. It's about creating environments where everyone can contribute their best work and receive appropriate recognition for their efforts. Richard Sterling's story, meanwhile, had become a cautionary tale that was used in business schools and corporate training programs to illustrate the consequences of abusive management and unethical business practices. After serving his prison sentence, Richard had been unable to find employment in the business world due to his criminal record and reputation for misconduct. He had been forced to take minimum wage jobs and had lost his home, his savings, and most of his professional relationships. Richard Sterling's downfall was complete and permanent. Business journalists wrote about his case. He went from being a powerful executive to being unemployable because he forgot that success in business requires treating people with respect and integrity. The contrast between Alex's rise and Richard's fall became a powerful reminder about the importance of character, ethics, and treating employees fairly regardless of their family connections or background. Alex Chen proved that talent and hard work, when supported by ethical management, can overcome even the most difficult workplace obstacles. His success demonstrated that nepotism, when used to correct injustices rather than create unfair advantages, can actually improve workplace cultures and benefit everyone. My father's intervention saved me from continued abuse, but also created an opportunity to build something better for all employees, Alex concluded. Sometimes family connections can be used to create positive change rather than unfair advantages, and sometimes the best revenge is building a better system than the one that tried to destroy you. The story of Alex Chen and Richard Sterling became legendary in the business world as the ultimate example of workplace karma, proving that abusive managers eventually face consequences for their behavior, and that talented employees can overcome even the most unfair treatment when they have the support and recognition they deserve.